Welcome to another Domo Lunch and Learn live stream. I am Eddie Small, Director of Community, and you can't see my face today, which could be a blessing or a curse, depending on how you feel about looking at my face during these Lunch and Learns every Tuesdays and Thursdays. It is Thursdays, which means it's time for our Domo data science team to jump in and do their thing. And they have brought a partner with them today, which is incredible because we love bringing our partners on to talk about what they do and how they specialize in connecting some of these really intricate data points directly into your Domo instance. There's some things in here that I really loved about the description: weather patterns, social media trends. For those of you that don't know, I used to be a little bit of a hobby meteorologist. So I love to talk about those types of things. And obviously being in marketing, love social media trends. We're excited to welcome Balin Springer from ReadySignal and Matt Schaefer from ReadySignal. And obviously my good friend, Flo, our Domo data scientist, and her data science team, all in the background, ready to answer your questions during this session. Unfortunately, AI Eddie will get out of the way as always, but if anybody has any questions, put those in the chats or comments section during this section. We would love to interact with you. Do not be shy. Chat, comment away, whether it's in the community or on YouTube, wherever you may be watching our Domo Lunch and Learn. So really excited for you to be joining us, and also excited to introduce our guests and Flo. Flo, it's all yours. Take it away.
Thank you, Eddie. I feel like we need to start by acknowledging your comment about your weather obsession, or I don't know what to call it. But
it's an obsession.
Is it ongoing?
It's been since I was little, since I was a kid. I always loved the weather.
I really feel like someone should ask a question about that in the chat. So
we do too. I would be more than happy to tell you how much I love weather.
I have so many questions about that statement. But yes, you might feel strongly about this then.
I do.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, but I'm relying on someone to ask that question. Okay, I am going to go full screen. Can you see it full screen?
Looks good.
Okay, great. Well, we have ReadySignal with us today. ReadySignal is one of our partners. And let me tell you about ReadySignal. Not only is it an amazing platform and product, but also the people are just so great, and you're going to hear from them, but just really, really lovely human beings. And that's always such a good thing when we're talking about, partners that we're advocating for and that we want customers to work with. So just to kind of set the discussion here, I want to start with this use case of Wonderland Park. And Wonderland Park is an amusement park. I wasn't super creative with the name, I guess, but Wonderland Park. It's an amusement park, and they want to predict attendance every day in order to be able to match staffing. They are going off of averages right now, and that's really not working out super well for them. If they have really high attendance one day and they're low on staff, they feel really overwhelmed. If they have a lot of staff and attendance is really low, they're just bleeding money by having all these employees there who are not doing a lot of work. So where would Wonderland Park start? To answer this question of attendance, normally they would first, of course, turn to their internal data, right? And here we have some examples of some of the data that they have available. For example, ticketing and attendance, they have information on ticket sales and attendance numbers and peak seasons, and all of these things provide insights into, what attendance may look like in the future. They have information on safety and security measures. And as you can imagine, if an amusement park makes it on the news multiple times because of injuries or security concerns, that's something that's going to affect whether or not people are going to be attending. They have information on food and beverages sales data, which allows them to know, how different components of their sales process is going. They have loyalty and membership tracking, so they can see things like loyalty programs. They can see who's coming, who's not, how the demographics may play into that. They have information on rides and which rides are popular and which ones are not. But when I think about going to an amusement park, there's other questions that I ask myself before making the decision to go or not, right? So I may ask myself, what's the weather going to look like? And, I'm sure, Eddie, you think about these things. I don't know if every day or all the time. I don't know how deep your obsession goes, but
It's every day.
every day. I mean, for good reasons, probably. Um, but I would ask myself, what's the weather going to look like tomorrow? That's going to affect whether or not I go to an amusement park. Another question I may ask myself is, for example, is it a school break? Is it fall break? Is it spring break? Because if that's the case, then I'm going to expect to see a lot of students at the park. And I have nothing against high school students, but I also want to really, really enjoy my experience at an amusement park. And so there's these external factors that would be relevant to take into account for an amusement park in order to predict attendance. Things like economic factors, right? The state of the economy, including things like consumer spending power, overall economic conditions, that's going to affect whether or not people can pay however much your ticket costs. And I'm thinking Disneyland, a couple $100 for a day ticket, right? It's not a small amount. You also have things like weather data. You can know what the temperature and the rain prediction is going to look like. You can see demographic shifts in the population around the amusement park. You can see social media trends. So again, the example of a security concern or a safety issue, if it makes it huge on Instagram and people are seeing that, then that may affect whether or not people are going to be attending. So these are just some examples of data that an organization may not have, but that would be really, really useful to utilize in order to predict whether or not you need to hire more people every day to match your attendance numbers. So just a little bit of background about external factors, right? I personally think all organizations benefit from using external data. I would make the argument that most use cases would be enhanced by the inclusion or the accounting for external factors. And just a little bit about external data. What is it? External data is any data that is gathered and processed and published by a source or an organization outside of the company organization that's using it. So any third-party data that you may be using would be considered external data. It may be available for public use. So things like the US Census, that's something that anyone can access. It may also be something that you need to pay for. There's all sorts of different forms of external data. And external data is really, really useful for providing insights that you may not be able to capture with your internal data in your organization. And it can be used for a lot of things. It's really useful for predictive modeling, but it's also really useful for just validating insights of descriptive data and enriching your data patterns. And from personal experience, I can tell you that external data is often just really, really hard to work with. And that's the case with any data that you are not collecting yourself and that you're not cleaning up yourself. It's really hard to know how people choose to handle cleaning and transformations. And so they often these data sets often require a lot of work in order to make them usable and reliable and accurate in a way that you can understand. And here are some sources for external factors. These are just the ones that we had mentioned for things that may be useful to think about when we're talking about Wonderland Park. For economic indicators, we have the Bureau of Labor Statistics and IMF. Weather patterns, there's quite a few sources that are really, really reliable and well respected for this. For demographic shifts, I know there's other people on the call that have worked with the US Census. I worked with the census quite a bit during graduate school, as well as Statistics Canada. And they have so much data, but it can take someone so long to put it together in a way that is usable for a use case. And I like to think that I was pretty good at data management and data handling when I was in grad school. That's what I was studying. And I would still work on projects that took months to gather US Census data and organize it in a way that matched the format that we wanted and that we needed in order for our use case to move forward. And this is what ReadySignal is so good at. ReadySignal, and you'll hear from Matt and Balin, they will describe it much better than I can. But ReadySignal specializes in providing access to these external data sources, and these data sets are clean. They're ready to be used. They are easily connected to Domo. They can be put through some really cool mechanisms that allow for some predictive components. So we're just really wanting the world, but really the Domo world, to hear from ReadySignal and get a chance to be exposed to what they can do for customers, for you, because we are such big fans of all the work they've already done in the background. It will save you so much time. So I'll stop sharing, and I'm going to pass it on to Matt and Balin. I don't know who's sharing the screen first, but Eddie will take care of that. So
I'm going to share my screen first here, but I would just say, Flo, thank you so much for the kind remarks on the front end. The love goes both ways. We love working with you. We love working with your team. And we love that you guys love external data. So thank you so much for allowing us to participate in the lunch and learn here. You should be able to see my screen right now, and I'm going to go full screen. And should be good to go. So I think Flo did an excellent setup as to kind of what we're doing here at ReadySignal. I'll just put a finer point on some of what we'll walk through in the hands-on component that will extend this Wonderland use case and put some legitimacy around what we're doing and how important these external factors can be. But I think, our love of this space, is certainly core to our organization and obviously our partnership with Domo. But this is not uncharted territory or an unknown opportunity. All the analysts are talking about it, but at the same time, very few organizations are really taking full advantage of the data that lives outside of their ecosystem or the four walls of their organization. And it's kind of a missed opportunity. It could be a competitive advantage if properly leveraged, but like Flo said, what we found is it's just a mess. And I won't belabor some of the reasons. It's just very difficult to procure. It's very difficult to work with, and that therein lies, I think, a massive opportunity for why ReadySignal exists today and some of the stuff that we're doing with Domo that are really, really unique. And what you see here is really kind of the core underlying pillars of the ReadySignal platform that we'll step through. But it all starts with the data. And we've purpose-built a data catalog that sits across all of those different categories that Flo was talking about and made it very easy to have a centralized landing spot for normalized data that can aggregate or deaggregate to the time and the geograin that I'm looking for, and make it easy for you to go and get what you're looking for, whether it's some consumer sentiment data, some weather information, some economic related data. Make it super easy for you to pull it in and meet you where you're doing your work inside of Domo with some of the integration work that we've done. We'll also show you kind of a scenario where maybe I don't know what I should be looking for. And kind of this center pillar speaks to that, where I've got all of this information, and I know that these handful of data points are really, really important to understanding park attendance. But what else is out there? We can help you there too. With this recommendation engine and the process that underpins it, we can help you take that target variable or the dependent variable that you're working on and look across everything in the catalog, test and engineer different versions of the features, do your period lag testing, all of the brute force work that's not so fun, and help you uncover some of those other hidden gems that become really, really important to your machine learning process, machine learning experimentation, as well as just your traditional BI and operational reporting. But we didn't stop there, and kind of the final mile that you see in this last pillar is the idea of enriching and accelerating how we can plumb this information into a forecast that's usable out of the box, or I could pass off to Flo and her brilliant peers to take this model across the finish line and operationalize it inside of Domo. We make it super easy for you to kind of meet you where you're at and where your teams are at on your Domo journey. And inside of kind of what we've built today, and as you look at your Domo environment in the connector library, you'll see a couple of very specific ReadySignal connectors that exist for bidirectional workflows to exist. And our whole goal is to make it super easy for you to enrich the work that you're doing inside of the data warehouse, inside of your Magic ETL and data flows, your visualizations, and enhance the work that you're doing on the more advanced machine learning work streams that are happening inside of your organizations with the integration that we've built. And we're going to step through all of this today and really carry the story that Flo set up across the finish line. So I'll pause real quick and maybe throw to Balin to speak to this slide, and then we can share his screen just about what we've prepared today for the Wonderland use case, and just to give it some context, and we'll be off to the races.
Great, yeah. So sticking with the Wonderland use case, we were able to track down some kind of a proxy data set for amusement park attendance. And so, as Flo mentioned, the overall objective of this exercise was like, oh, can we determine external factors that could be impacting the Wonderland park attendance? And so we have this data set, and this data set's what we're going to work on. So I've got this time series for the past 4 or 5 years of attendance data. And obviously you can see there's a tremendous amount of seasonality happening here as expected. But yeah, our overall goal is to say like, okay, how can we identify some of these external data quickly and easily, bring that into Domo and use that to either enrich existing models or build some new models around that. So from there, I will share my screen. Great. And so yeah, wanted to talk just about a couple things really quick to set this up. And so as Flo and Matt mentioned, like this ReadySignal was largely designed by data scientists for data scientists to really accelerate a lot of that data discovery process and kind of just the overall data enrichment process. And so our goal is to manage all these APIs. So whether it's the Bureau of Labor Statistics or any of the economic data sources or the weather, like we're managing all those APIs. We want to bring all those data sources into one place so that that we're cleaning it up, we're normalizing it, and having it ready for our data scientists to model. And so instead of having to touch, a dozen or maybe 100 different APIs to get all of these things, our goal, you come to ReadySignal, it's all here in one place, and you can start to grab everything that you need, and have that all packaged up nicely again, at the time and GeoGreen that you're looking for. And so, in thinking of this, so one, as a data scientist, we can explore the data catalog and start to bring these features together to answer this question around, what is driving attendance for Wonderland Park. And so as Flo mentioned, I think she brought up some things, right? Disposable income. So you can just key that in and search for that and find that as a feature and add that to a signal. I think we're also talking about Matt mentioned some consumer sentiment, so that can be added to the feature. And so anything that you're looking for. And I think Flo also mentioned that if we wanted to look at some of the population demographic changes, so we have all the census data, across multiple census surveys. So you can start to look at different, population cuts, across, at zip code levels, and start to really, for Wonderland, determine like what is that area that they're operating in, what is, kind of where are folks coming from, and how have the demographics changed during that time period. And so again, all of this stuff is available and kind of easily ready to work with and to bring together for your analysis. And so a quick example of that is that I created a signal along those lines about this amusement park demographic data. And so again, this is very focused around starting to key in on some of the census data. But in this case, I've created a signal that so I've kind of focused it on Indiana, Michigan, and Ohio. We're based in Ann Arbor, so we're thinking about Wonderland Park in this area. And then also, I wanted to look at it at a city level. This could be broken down, either by, to a zip code level, a county level, et cetera, whatever the model, modeling exercise is. So we're going to bring in all of that census data. And here, just a simple example, looking at both the population for the 2010 census, as well as the population for the 2020 census. And then also the housing units. So we may have another an indicator that, that both population growth or, increase or decrease, as well as, how, like an economic layer to that too, of how, how housing units are expanded in each of these areas could be available. And so that's one quick example about, okay, we have an hypothesis. We think, we think the population growth or, in these areas could be impacting attendance. And so here's one way to create a signal to bring that in, bring that into Domo and start to test that against the attendance data. The second way would be, as Matt mentioned, this kind of recommendation engine to say like, okay, I may not already have a predetermined hypothesis as to what I want to test as what could be impacting this attendance. And so we've set up this auto discovery functionality, which allows you as a user to say, all right, I'm looking to predict this Wonderland attendance. Go find me some things that look like they could be related to this data set. And I can start to bring that in and start to test in my models. And so the way that process works is, once again, you can kind of define your time grain, whether you're looking at daily or monthly data, et cetera. And in this case, the proxy data set we have is at monthly, so I would do that. And again, then you could also look for relationships both at like state level economic factors as well as the overall nation. In this case, I've just kind of got a general proxy data set that I'd use. But here I'm going to upload that amusement park attendance that we just looked at in that slide and run this auto discovery process. And so what's happening here is that we've now taken that attendance data and we're really just kind of joining it to all the features that we have in the database and running a simple Pearson correlation to figure out like what are those, what are the features that are most highly correlated to this that could be some initial testing points to start to evaluate as predictors for that attendance. And so that's completed. I've kind of already run it as well. And so the result of this is a curated signal that, again, is matched in terms of the time series of that historical data I've loaded. So we had data back from July 2018 through May of this year. And so now we have a signal that has consolidated features across all of these sources for all these external factors that could be correlated to that attendance. And so no surprise here, you start to see some of the weather data show up in terms of the temperature and even the snowfall and the rainfall. So those things are showing some correlation. The other thing that we're doing at this time as well is we're testing the raw features themselves, but also testing lags of these features. And again, our goal at ReadySignal is really to help our customers identify these leading indicators. And so we wanted to incorporate this lag testing into this recommendation component so that, we can, again, take away the heavy lifting from having the data scientist to have to manually do all of this testing. And so in this case, it's also suggesting that we're seeing a relationship, at least a correlation between the new private housing units, and we're seeing that the highest correlation with, again, this was monthly data, but has a 4-month lag to that. So again, this could be a leading indicator, and our overall goal is really to identify and be hyper vigilant around helping our customers find those leading indicators to really enable the predictive elements of building these forecasts, and again, taking away all the data scientists from having to do the manual testing.
And I maybe add a comment to there too, Balin. I mean, in all of the customer work and Flo, you may be able to attest to this. Just going through this exercise, there's in almost every case been a couple of things that have been surfaced with this recommendation process where it's been like that epiphany, like, I never really thought that this metric would be have some sort of indicator or early indication to headwinds or tailwinds for my business. But when we go a layer deeper and we look at kind of how we profile the data, and that was maybe a good example if you want to click on one of those, Balin, and you look under the hood with some of the context that we also provide with the features that are in the data catalog, it starts to snap some things into focus, and these like dark horse metrics that I'll call them. Can be incredibly powerful as you weave them into your modeling processes, and just those things that you never thought of that surface can be material in just the performance and the predictability that we're able to support.
Yep, and just to add to, and like again, keeping with our goal of trying to help save our data scientists time and energy, all the features that we onboard to the platform, we're running just kind of all the industry standard just tests on the data and doing the profiling. So checking for autocorrelation, checking for seasonality, and checking to see how the data is, what distribution is of the data. And so you can see all those tests. Pardon me. You can see the results of all those tests here. And these tests then drive also some suggested treatments around the data. Say like, okay, this feature is showing autocorrelation and a non-normal distribution. So suggesting that this data should both be different to make it stationary, as well as apply the order norm transformation to normalize it. And so again, our goal to help take this heavy lifting and this type of testing out of the process and help expedite the data discovery to the actual model building. And then you can see, with those recommendations, you can also apply those treatments directly into the platform. So again, in this case, we've already transformed it by lagging it one period, but you can also take the recommendation there and both difference the data and apply the order norm transformation as well to prepare that feature to make sure it's ready to go into your model. Or you can obviously just bring in the raw data yourself and transform it the way you would want to as well. And again, interestingly enough, going through this auto discovery process, not only did we originally have an hypothesis that the disposable income could be related to attendance, it also shows up, as part of that. So to Matt's point, not only are we seeing the things that maybe we would expect or have a hypothesis around, but also things that may be surprising to some degree. And then a couple other additional economic factors, personal savings rate, et cetera. So this was the signal that we generated for the Wonderland attendance. And so again, this whole step is just about how do we expedite the process of figuring out what external features could be most valuable for this exercise and have it ready to go. But kind of really where the rubber hits the road then is getting this into Domo to work with it there. And so we have a very great relationship with Domo and have prioritized integration on the Domo side. And so there is a pre-built data connector as well as just general API connections. And so, all you need is the API key and the signal ID to get what you need. And so on the data connector side of things, within the connector library here, there is the ReadySignal data connector. And once you input the API key and kind of create the account connection, then you can, then this will pull up a list of all of your signals. And then this should just run for a second here, but we'll have a list of all the signals here, and then you can just select the signal that you've created. In this case, you can identify it by both the name as well as the ID, and that will bring it right into Domo to start working with. So here's 1747.
And what's nice too, I would comment, Balin, is this is not just set up as a one-time process like any other environment that you're working with that you're connecting to Domo. We can also set up the refresh frequency. So we're managing that pipeline from the different features that are in this signal itself. And as they update from the source, you can set it so that it refreshes and will continue to append and enrich the data environment here inside of Domo, making it, again, much more powerful. And we're managing, that process for you, to continue to enrich the insights that you're delivering outside of with this external data.
Yep. That's a great point. So at the signal level, you can always make sure that your signal has the most relevant and up-to-date data available. And so that anytime you're looking at it in Domo when it's refreshed, it's ready to go. So you never have to leave that environment to do so. But yeah, in this case, we've connected to the signal. And now we have, again, that time series of these external factors that were identified kind of ready to go. And either you can, so it's a table in Domo here, and you can start to work with it through the magic ETL, or start to plug it into machine learning models, etc. Maybe the other thing I will point out is that there's a full integration, through the Jupyter Notebook side of things. So everything I just showed you can actually execute via API calls. And so just a quick example in the Jupyter Notebooks here, again, we could create a data frame that has that amusement park attendance data. Again, here we have the access token for the ReadySignal API, and there's a function to run that auto discovery where you can set, again, those parameters, whether it's state or country, whether it's daily or monthly, pass in that, it'll generate the signal, and then you can call the signal back. And so again, this is that same data table of these external factors that you can, start to work with and just have, again, like all of that, everything I just showed you in the GUI can also be accomplished right within the Jupyter Notebooks API or environment as well. Our whole goal, again, making data scientists' lives easier, and when we don't have to have them leave the Domo when they don't have to, like we want to make sure we enable that as much as possible. And then the next piece would, as Matt mentioned, we can not only identify those factors, but some of our customers have asked us to take this over the finish line and actually create the forecast as well. And so there is a forecast module really, which will then just take it to the next step and say, not only have we identified those external factors, but we also want to, take the first pass at building the model and see what we can learn from there. And so very similar, you would set up, kind of define your time in GeoGrain here. You can define your forecast period. In this case, we're looking at a monthly data again, but it's whether or not you want to forecast out 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, or if it were daily data, if I'm looking to forecast tomorrow or 7 days from now, et cetera, you can define what that forecast period is. Similarly, we're going to upload that amusement park attendance data, and then. Oh, the screen share is not allowing me to start it. But then, anyways, you would. I apologize that that would kick off the forecast, and so I can show you the results there. So once you bring that in, it'll start to analyze this data, and it goes through several components of both an autoaggressive component. It'll bring in any other internal data that you've uploaded as well, and start to test those. It'll start to test all these different external factors that we started to see on the auto discovery process. It'll test both the difference data as well as the raw data, et cetera. But it ultimately will then create this forecast based on the defined period. And so here it's looking to create the forecast for May, June, and July here based on that data. And then so we've just set up the dashboard here to be very simple so that we can both look at the, kind of look at the forecast of what we'll start to see, as well as just some simple visuals of what would this look like for, the next 3 months, versus the same time last year, as well as for the past 3 months, just to get a sense of head and tailwind type of stuff. But what's a little bit more valuable is once you download the model here, we provide so we provide a kind of whole slew of information, both the model summary, we provide the transform data, so that's available, but maybe more importantly for this community is there's a Python object or a pickle file that you can bring in, and that will have all the model information, so it can all be recreated, including the signal data. But in this case, for the amusement parks, so super interesting, here's the final model after we went through that iterative testing. And so certainly no surprise that, again, for this kind of monthly attendance, that the seasonality aspect came into play. But here's where we started to see some of those external factors that look to be leading indicators of both personal savings rate with that was lagged 11 periods, as well as the personal consumption expenditures, lag 3 periods here look to be significant predictors. So again, these, our overall goal is to like try to do as much of the heavy lifting and the dirty work to figure out what these most important lead indicators are for any use case, and then be able to hand off that data, that information to our customers to really start to fine tune it and build it around their business knowledge as well.
So I'd throw to Eddie maybe real quick to see if we've got any questions that are popping up in the peripheral through the chat that we want to address head on, or if there's anything, Flo, that you think that we want to also spotlight here in the work that we're doing together, or even anecdotally some of the things that you're seeing with some of the client work that you're doing today.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So far, so good. Again, we have a number of folks joining us live, as I can see watching the channel. Unfortunately, not a lot of people asking questions. So get in there if you've got any questions for Balin or Matt. I don't know what else we have to do, but dangle a little carrot and say, come on, guys, ask us a question. Or this is kind of your time to make a comment about what you've seen today from Balin and Matt. Flo, I'll kick it to you before we wrap up here.
Perfect. I do have a question, actually, and I'm just really curious about what some of the indicators that you found have been surprising to you in relation to the use case. I'm sure when you have access to all this data, you're finding things that you never thought about, right? That we don't normally have access to. And I'm just curious,
Sure.
Has anything been super surprising?
I think, in every case, like I said earlier, there's always some dark horse metric that pops up that you're just like, wow, I never would have thought of that. My favorite, and I think it's Balin's as well, is the wood pulp index, right? Never did I know how important this would be as a leading indicator of the movement of wood pulp through the economy that ties into both GDP and also early indication to recession that's popping up. And again, my love affair with all things alternative data, I'd have to say my number one is wood pulp index. Balin, can you comment, or did I steal your thunder?
No, I think, Flo, something that I found really interesting is, one, I spent close to a decade just in automotive. So I was very wired around this automotive mentality and around just like all the things that impacted automotive. What I've really found interesting now, as we've started to work with like the food service industry, and they're providing products to restaurants or, like delis, et cetera, I'm starting to see like vehicle sales and like automotive demand show up as lead indicators for like the high-end retail products. There's some so it's been really fascinating for me to see this like overlap of like, here's these other industries that have some interesting like lead indicators for like what I assume to be somewhat non-related industries. But if I take a step back and take off my automotive blinders, I can totally see how those things are related. But I just never would have thought to test that. And so those are the things I found really interesting as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It like really paints a holistic picture, right? Like how everything is interrelated. I also had no idea wood pulp indices were a thing.
Right.
So yeah, I would have never thought to include that in a conceptual model. So I'm gonna go dig into that.
I have to dig into that. You need some wood pulp in your life, Flo. And I think what else might be interesting for the group, just in what we're seeing with our clients, is the opportunity to leverage some of the horsepower between ReadySignal and Domo to really step outside of just more of a generalized blanket kind of forecast and be able to do this same process at a very granular level, where it's either a SKU or a category inside of like my product portfolio. And through this experimentation, see how wildly different some of these market dynamics are for like one SKU versus the next, and the ability to then layer that into a very kind of bespoke, demand forecast for that category or SKU, just improving kind of the performance, the predictability, and what I can action against, that has become a material kind of impact for our customers. When you think about taking all of this stuff and really operationalizing it into your daily practice, Balin, I don't know if you'd maybe want to comment on that as well. I know that kind of ties back to what you were just saying, just with some of the stuff that you've seen anecdotally with some of the clients that we interface with.
Yeah, what I've been excited about is working with a few customers who they have their forecast kind of set, and they know they're like, oh, we feel like we're missing something. And we've got, we just recently saw an example where they had a great model, it had like a 17% error or something like that, and they're like, we definitely need to tweak some things. And within a few minutes, we kind of helped them through that auto discovery process, found 20 features for them that looked like it could be helpful. And then they just iteratively went through and added those and tested them in their existing model. They found 2 features that were really helpful to the model, and it reduced the error down to like 6% or something like that. And so it's just been really satisfying to, in a very short amount of period of time, be able to help some of these customers, like just fill in a few of those gaps that would otherwise have been kind of a pain to identify the things to test first and foremost, and then do all the testing.
Yeah, saving so much time. It's crazy. All right. I think we're good, Eddie.
Okay.
I just want to say I'm seeing your RxA instance, and I just have this sticker. Wait, where's the camera?
There it
I
is.
was given at the Connections tour last week.
Big
so
fans of RxA.
Yeah.
Big fans of RxA.
I haven't put it on my computer yet because I'm getting a new case. But I have some Chat GPT ones as well. Where's the camera?
Love that. Love that.
Anyway.
Well,
Balin, coming your way too, Flo. You need to. So we're gonna get some ReadySignal on that computer.
Yeah. I'm come to the Connections tour and we'll party together.
That's right.
I couldn't make it to the New York one. You didn't have this out. We'll just have to cross paths in person.
We'll make it happen.
Love a good sticker. Well, Flo, Balin, and Matt, thank you guys so much for joining us. Another exciting Domo Lunch and Learn. And we hope those that have been joining and watching got everything they needed, and all the information can obviously be found. Balin and Matt, how can folks get a hold of you if they have any additional questions after this session?
ReadySignal.com. Check it out. You can contact us through there. Reach out to Flo. Reach out to the Domo team. They know how to get a hold of us. We're super excited about what we're doing. The happy partnership that we have with Domo, and just eager to help change your relationship with external data. It's all the rage these days, people. So please feel free to reach out. You can get to us very easily through all of those channels and more.
When you figure out which trend I need to be following so that I can see a tornado in real life, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you, Flo. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Balin. And again, maybe Flo will probably make fun of me after this call. Appreciate you guys so much for being a part of the Domo Lunch, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks again.
Thanks
everyone.